Hello and welcome to another Kings of War Battle Report. Today we have 1,000 points of Elves facing off against 1,000 points of Forces of Nature. Scenario is Invasion, so the only victory points you get are for the units that you have on your opponent's half of the table at the end of the game. Now let's take a look at the battlefield. The forests and houses here are all height 3. Hills are all height 1. We have an obstacle in between the two houses in the far corner. A little pit of lava, which we're treating as difficult terrain, height 0. And then a bit of shrubs just beyond the lava, also difficult terrain, height 0. Here we have a zoomed out view of the deployment for the whole field. And now let's take a closer look at the individual units that are deployed. Starting with my opponent, on the far left we have a unit of Hunters of the Wild, and then to the right of them we have a Winged Unicorn, and then another unit of Hunters of the Wild. Next down the line we have a horde of Forest Shamblers, and then finally a big scary Tree Herder. And for my deployment, I'll start with the archers on my far right flank, deployed right behind those houses. Next to them is the regiment of Palace Guard. They're actually forward a little bit where that die is. It was just a little tricky on that hill. Next to them we have the mage, followed by the two bolt throwers, and then the regiment of Tall Spears. And then on my far left flank we have the troop of Stormwind Cavalry, and then the troop of the, what are they called? Glade Stalkers. And then I want to take a look at the zoomed out deployment view to discuss what my strategy was as I was deploying. I outnumber my opponent almost 2 to 1, I think. I was able to supply a much wider frontage overall. The idea here was to use the buddy system to overwhelm his units. The Palace Guard are situated there to support the archers, and then the Stormwind Cavalry is angled to flank whatever the Tall Spears engage, while the Glade Stalkers were going to vanguard forward and then swing wide around, hopefully to rear whatever still threatened me mid-game. So that's the plan, while the Bolt Throwers and Mage are centralized so they can go either direction, supporting where needed. Now, let's see how well that works out. Now, the first thing that happened, I didn't actually get a picture of, but it was a big deal, was the Vanguard movement. My opponent's army, almost every unit in his force has Vanguard. I think the only thing that doesn't Vanguard is the Winged Unicorn. So by the time we actually started the game, everything in his force besides the Winged Unicorn is 12 inches straight forward, right into the woods. Forces of Nature can ignore woods. And then my Glade Stalkers on my far left flank are straight 12 inches forward up on that hill. I won the roll-off for turn, took the first turn. As far as movement, I moved the Glade Stalkers forward and then pivoted to get a clean shot at the Winged Unicorn. The archers moved up to take defensive position behind the obstacle between the houses. And then the cavalry, I believe I swung around the forest. I didn't get a picture of it, but I ended up scrapping my original plan, fearing getting flanked through the forest by the tricky Forces of Nature. Shooting that turn, Glade Stalkers put a couple wounds on the Winged Unicorn, but failed to waver it. And then the Bolt Throwers shot into the tree, or what are they? Forest Shamblers, doing several wounds, but failing to waver. They don't have a waver route, and a pretty high route check route. Archers took a shot at the tree man, didn't really expect much, didn't get much. They didn't do any damage. And on my opponent's turn, he moves his 2 units of Hunters of the Wild straight forward, one into the difficult terrain. The Winged Unicorn, he marches right behind the unit of Hunters of the Wild, isn't able to use the healing because he moved at the double, and then charges into the Palace Guard with the Forest Shamblers and the Tree Herder. I believe he did around 10 damage this time, and the first roll he made did rout the unit, but I have the Mage with the Inspiring Talisman right behind them, so he was forced to reroll and then ended up wavering them. On to my turn. I charged the Stormwind Cavalry and the Tall Spears into the left unit of the Hunters of the Wild. There were two there. This picture only shows one because I took it after the shooting, which, as you can see, went well. And then on the right side, the archers hopped over the little fence and then did a pivot so that they could be positioned to possibly charge, maybe just offer support fire to try and help out the palace guard. As you may have already guessed, most of my shooting was focused on the Rightmoor unit of Hunters of the Wild. My fear was if I failed to break the Hunters of the Wild that I charged into on the left, then my spearman's flank would be exposed to a very brutal charge from the other Hunters of the Wild unit. So I focused both Bolt Thors and a Fireball from the Mage into that unit and just obliterated it. And back to my opponent's turn. He charges his Winged Unicorn into one of the Bolt Thors. The center of the line was completely open there. And then he charges the Palace Guard again with the Tree Herder and the horde of Forest Shamblers. This time they do not make it. Had to roll twice, but didn't get those double ones, which is, I think, the only thing that would have saved me. And then he reformed like this. And then also, of course, knocked out the Bolt Thor with the Winged Unicorn. And then rather than go d6 inches forward to get out of the arc of the other Bolt Thor, he decided just to pivot so that he could charge the other Bolt Thor or my mage in the next round, hoping that he survives a shot from that Bolt Thor. So then on my turn, I wanted to make sure and take out that last unit of Hunters of the Wild. It may have been a bit of overkill. They already had 9 wounds on him, but better safe than sorry. Hit him in the flank with the Glade Stalkers and then also with the Stormwind Cavalry. And then in the shooting phase, shot the Bolt Thor into the Winged Unicorn. I think I also hit it with a Fireball. I got its wounds up pretty high, but then as you see there, rolled a 3 when all I needed to waver it was a 4 or a 6 to rout. And this is what my left flank looks like at the end of my turn. The Stormwind Cavalry are positioned to get to his side of the board. I realize at this point that the objective is not to destroy my enemy's troops, it's to get my stuff on his side of the board, and I don't think I have anything. So just to make sure I get something over there, I point the Stormwind Cavalry in that direction. I leave the Glade Stalkers pointed towards my back of the board to hunt down that Winged Unicorn. And then the Spearmen are positioned there to protect the flank of the Cavalry and the Glade Stalkers against the Forest Shamblers. And then on my opponent's turn, he charges his Forest Shamblers into my remaining Bolt Thor and the Winged Unicorn into my Mage, as well as his Tree Herder into my Archers. Now, he only managed to do 4 wounds with the Tree Herder, which wasn't too bad. Archers held out just fine. The Forest Shamblers did, of course, knock out the Bolt Thor, but the Winged Unicorn did waver the Mage, but didn't rout it. And then on my turn, I made a couple of bad mistakes. I don't know if I was getting tired at this point. I should have turned those tall spears around and started heading towards his edge of the table and just ran from anything he had. Instead, I turned them to face the Forest Shamblers on my side of the table. And then probably my biggest mistake of the game, which could have easily cost me the game, I charged his Tree Herder with my Archers. One good thing about this turn was because of the previous positioning, I did have a clean shot with the Glade Stalkers, didn't even need to move them, and there was no cover for his Winged Unicorn. So they took a shot, put a couple of wounds on the Winged Unicorn, and then did manage to rout it. Now, I don't think I got any pictures of his next turn. I think the game was getting pretty intense down towards the wire here. I know he charged into my Archers and did considerable wounds to them, and then I totally lucked out. He needed a 4 to waver them, a 6 to rout him, and he rolled a 3. Kind of a bit of balancing out from when I failed to waver his Winged Unicorn earlier. I believe the Tree Herders, no, I get them confused. They used to be Treekin, now they're Forest Shamblers, and then the Tree Man is now a Tree Herder. Anyway, the Forest Shamblers charged into the Tall Spears, doing a couple wounds, but failing to waver them. And here's what I should have done the turn before. I don't know why I was charging a Tree Man on the 4th or 5th turn with Archers. The most elite unit in the game is probably not going to kill him at that point, much less Archers. Instead, I this turn finally, as I should have, pivoted them and just got onto his side of the table. And then here we have the movement for the rest of my troops. Again, just trying to get everything I can onto his side of the table. I've given up on the tall spears. At this point, they're just trying to hold down anything from threatening rears or flanks. Now the mage moved up and healed a couple wounds on the tall spears, and then I also wanted to make sure that I was within 6 inches to give them inspiring. And then on my last turn here, I did countercharge into the forest shamblers, and possibly game-winning combat here, did a couple wounds. They're pretty tough, but I managed a couple, and then rolled an 11 on the waiver check. And they were not in range of anything with inspiring. I think I needed an 11 or a 12 to rout them, and I got an 11. And that took them out. All that he had left on my side of the table was the tree herder, while I had the archer regiment, the stormwind cavalry, and the glade stalkers. So we called the game at that point as the only way for him to remove something from his side of the table would be to charge with his tree man, getting it off of my side. So it looked pretty settled to us at that point. So that was the game. It was a really fun game. I really enjoyed the scenario. It made for probably the most fun Kings of War game I've had so far. I've only played about a dozen Kings of War games, but they seem to keep getting better. I'm really enjoying it. So I look forward to the next game and the next battle report. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.